Keane.
Keane shot!
Told you the scoring wasn't done with. My goodness.
Keane! And the goal for Manchester United!
For him, every match was war. Ruthless, relentless, feared by opponents, and even feared by his own teammates. From rust and acid to ripping through the Premier League, from breaking rules to breaking legs, fight was all he had. And that fight made him United's ruthless captain, loved, feared, and hated. At his peak, he was United's most influential leader. This is the story of Roy Keane, the man who defined United's golden years.
Manchester United are the champions of Europe again.
And the man who tore them apart on his own terms. Roy Keane was born into a working-class family in the suburbs of Cork, Ireland. On top of being from a poor background, he also wasn't the brightest kid in school, so right from a young age, he knew his future lay in sports rather than an education. As he would later describe in his autobiography, life began when the bell rang to signal the end of the school day. He first started playing football in his local area before joining Rockmount AFC at the age of 8, but as was common with boys in his neighbourhood, he also joined up at a boxing club. This would certainly offer some insight into his fierce persona on the pitch years later. After 3 years of boxing training, he qualified at age 12 to box in the Novice League, winning all 4 of his fights.
When I was a kid, when I was 11, 12 years of age, for a few years I was at a boxing club, as you do when you're younger back in Ireland, keep out of trouble. And my brother had about 50 amateur fights, my younger brother. But I had about four amateur fights, yeah. I was unbeaten, you know.
Same as it.
But despite a promising career in both football and boxing, the time ultimately came for him to choose between the two sports, and it was clear where his heart truly lay. However, choosing football didn't mean Roy Keane was the perfect football prodigy. In fact, he was rather small for his age, forcing him to focus his game on running, making accurate passes to his teammates, and his resilient ball-winning ability. He wasn't a dazzling player, but he had the work rate, and his contributions didn't go unnoticed. In his first season at Rockmount, he got voted Player of the Year. But while he was making his mark on the football field, his indifference to formal education wasn't without consequence. He failed his intermediate certificate exam, and while it may have looked like he still had football to fall back on, he was about to suffer a more shattering heartbreak. The trials for the Irish under-15 international team were being held in Dublin, and Keane, along with 4 of his teammates from Rockmount, were invited. This was an opportunity of a lifetime for the boys. A spot on the under-15 team meant the chance to join an English football club and possibly play professional football at the highest level. So at the trial game, Keane played football like his life depended on it. But when the list of selected players was published in the papers, all 4 of his friends made it, while his name was nowhere to be found. The door to his dream had just slammed shut in his face. He couldn't understand what went wrong, but word came back from the selectors that the reason he wasn't picked was because of his small stature, which to them meant he wasn't physically equipped.
Before anybody else thought he could play, I recommended him to Spurs and to West Brom, but they were too lazy to come and look. And Roy Keane was exceptional. Roy Keane wrote to 92 clubs in England looking for trials, and the only club that responded was Notts Forest.
Keane was left back in Ireland with no meaningful educational qualification and an uncertain future in professional football. One of his friends at Brighton booked him a trial, but the club cancelled it last minute when they heard how small Keane was, but somehow found the resilience to keep training and playing football with the same enthusiasm. However, his mere love of football wasn't going to put food on his table. To make ends meet, Keane took on odd jobs. In the spring, he would cycle 15 miles each day to work in the fields, picking potatoes, a job he later said gave him back issues that never went away. At another point, he took a job stripping paint and rust off metal plates with acid, a blowtorch, and no protective clothing. It was dangerous work, but it paid well, and that was all that mattered. Meanwhile, he wrote to several other English clubs to request trials, but even they weren't interested. Derby County said, "I'm afraid that we have no vacancies at the present time, but would like to thank you for your interest and would like to wish you every success in the future." Responses from other clubs like Chelsea, Aston Villa and Nottingham Forest conveyed a similar message. "We don't want you." But just when he was at his lowest point was when he got his big break from a most unlikely source. On February 18th, 1990, Keane's team took a 4-0 loss to a Dublin club known as Belvedere FC. You would think this fact alone would have made the match one to forget for Keane, but he had played his heart out. He kept going even when he knew the game was lost. This would go on to be his defining characteristic later on, leading Sir Alex Ferguson to say, "Roy Keane played as if he would rather die of exhaustion than lose." And it was this unique character that attracted the attention of a Nottingham Forest scout named Noel McCabe, who was in the audience during the team's humiliating loss. He was so impressed by Keane's performance that he offered him a trial immediately after the game. Roy Keane didn't get his hopes up, but after the trial match, he admitted he had a good feeling about that one. And this time, he was right. Roy Keane signed for Nottingham Forest for a £47,000 transfer fee and a starting wage of £250 a week, with a yearly bonus of £1,500. He soon secured a starting spot on the team and also finally got called up to play for the Irish national team.
Over it, pass from Keane. Fabulous goal. It's 2 for Forest.
Things were finally looking up for him in the 1992-93 season. He was named Forest's Player of the Season.
At Forest, in the Premier League's first season, Keane was Player of the Year in a relegated team.
And attracted attention from big English clubs. That was the same year Forest got relegated from the newly formed Premier League, giving Roy Keane an extra reason to move to another club. Blackburn Rovers made contact with Keane and were willing to pay a British record transfer fee of £4 million and put him on a £400,000 a year salary. All that remained was the contract signing. But on a fateful Saturday afternoon, Keane received an unexpected call while having lunch with his family. It was Sir Alex Ferguson. After finding out that Keane hadn't signed any forms already, he convinced him to come to Manchester and have a chat before making his mind up. Roy met up with Ferguson, but was hesitant since he had given his word to Blackburn and didn't want to go back on it. However, it only took one statement from Ferguson for Keane to be convinced. He said, "Roy, Manchester United are going to dominate the domestic game with or without you, but with you, we can win in Europe."
United have broken the British transfer record, investing £3.75 million in a player for the future.
United had also just won the Premier League and was arguably the most famous club in Europe at the time, so it was a no-brainer for any footballer. Now all he had to worry about was breaking the news to Blackburn. They were furious. But Keane went ahead to sign for United in the summer of 1993 at a record transfer fee of £3.75 million and an agreed £350,000 yearly salary. As if to predict what a legacy he would leave at the club, Keane's start at United was near perfect. He scored twice on his home debut in a 3-0 win against Sheffield United and grabbed the winner in the Manchester derby.
Lovely little flick from Giggs, onside Roy Keane, and the first goal for Manchester United for Roy Keane.
3 months later, when United overturned a 2-0 deficit to beat Manchester City 3-2.
His Cantona closing in. Manchester Giggs. Oh, it's a super ball, and Cantona is there for Owen. It's Hughes, and coming in behind him was Roy Keane.
He helped the club win 2 more Premier League titles and 2 FA Cups in 3 years, and his contributions didn't go unnoticed. The summer of 1995 saw a period of change at United, with a couple of key players leaving, and younger players such as David Beckham, Nicky Butt and Paul Scholes being brought into the team, which left Keane as the most experienced player in midfield. And after Eric Cantona's unexpected retirement in 1997, Keane took over as club captain. However, he missed most of the 1997-98 season because of an injury caused by an attempt to tackle Alfie Haaland in the 9th Premier League game of the season. As Keane lay on the ground in pain, Alfie Haaland stood over him, accusing the injured United captain of having tried to hurt him and of feigning injury to escape punishment. This incident is one Keane would never forget and would be the reason for one of his most infamous acts. as a football player 4 years later. His absence for the rest of the campaign was cited by many pundits as one of the major reasons United failed to successfully defend their league title. He did, however, return the next season to lead Manchester United to win the FA Cup and UCL treble, making them the first and only English side for almost 25 years.
Manchester United are the champions of Europe again.
A feat they could have never pulled off if it wasn't for his inspirational semi-final display against Juventus, where, being 2-0 down, he scored the first goal.
Beckham with a corner. In towards Keane! Roy Keane with a captain's goal for Manchester United. Game on!
And led the team to a 3-2 comeback. The very next season, he was voted English Player of the Year after leading United to their 6th Premier League title in 8 years.
And the winner of the Player of the Year 2000 of the team Manchester United and of the Republic of Ireland, Roy Keane!
He had made 13 goal contributions that season, which is pretty decent for a defensive midfielder, but it was also the effect he had on the team that made him so invaluable. In the words of Paul Scholes, "I soon learned that if you weren't on your game, Roy would be on top of you to make sure you were playing your part for the team. I had a few bollockings from him, but that made you work harder to avoid them." But being critical of his teammates wasn't what caused his biggest controversy. It looked like Keane had been plotting his payback against Alfie Haaland for the last few years, and the opportunity finally presented itself in a Manchester derby. On April 21st, 2001, with 5 minutes of game time left to play, Roy Keane was sent off for a knee-high foul on Alfie Haaland in what was seen by many as an act of revenge. He initially received a 3-match suspension and a £5,000 fine, but further punishment was to follow after the release of Keane's autobiography, where he said, "I'd waited long enough. I f***ing hit him hard. The ball was there. Take that, you cunt. And don't ever stand over me sneering about fake injuries." His admission that the tackle was a premeditated assault got him banned for a further 5 matches and fined £150,000 in the ensuing investigation. Another controversy arose a year later when Keane got sent home from the 2002 World Cup after an intense altercation with the coach, but his clash with another coach would also lead to his dismissal at United after United suffered a 4-1 defeat at the hands of Middlesbrough in 2005. He criticised the performances of several of his teammates during a live interview. Of the club's record signing at the time, Rio Ferdinand, he said, "Just because you are paid £120,000 a week and play well for 20 minutes against Tottenham, you think you are a superstar." Sir Alex Ferguson was furious since his comments were made publicly. He called a meeting with the squad to watch the interview together, but Keane doubled down on his criticism and argued with Ferguson. It is said to be one of the factors that finally led to his exit from Old Trafford, because shortly after, on November 18th, 2005, United announced Keane's contract had been terminated. A month later, Keane signed for Scottish club Celtic FC, but on June 12, 2006, only 6 months after joining Celtic, Keane announced his retirement from professional football on medical advice. His announcement prompted glowing praise from many of his former colleagues and managers, including Sir Alex Ferguson, who said,